More than 4 years ago, I started development on the 3-position forced reset Militia battle trigger, and now today, I will show you a close-up detailed view of how it works and what my future plans were with the trigger before the big guys threatened to sue. Okay, so here it is, the insides of the MBT all broken apart, starting off here at the trigger, and just the standard regular green disconnect spring. This will hold the disconnect up and allow it to go up and down, just like a standard Mil-Spec spring. And then we're here in the front, you have a front spring that I created where I had to mill out a little space here in the front so that this spring can be installed. And of course, you can use the disconnect to pull it out, and it's cut ground on both sides. It doesn't matter which direction the spring is installed. Okay, and so then that is a prepped trigger piece. It's a standard Mil-Spec trigger. You'll notice this cutout here, which I'll explain in a second, and that I added this spring here. So let's get to the disconnect. Now this is the main feature of the whole operation. The disconnect has been cut and lengthened so that when a pin is in there, it is allows the disconnect to move forward and backwards, okay? Okay, pause. So this is where I want to do a quick inject and just say that I started developing this several years ago and then was finally able to release these to the public when only ever got to release 200 as a limited edition kind of pre-order run. Was originally going to do a parts kit, but I made the full trigger to control more of my tolerances and everything. And but yeah, I only got to release 200 of those to the public. And when I noticed that Tim Hoffman just released his trigger kicker, that the disconnect uses that same elongated pinhole, and I figured that, hey, you know what, maybe I could release what I've learned and shown and whatever in the development of mine as a 3-position, and that might have some implications and help him develop his as a 3-position, because I definitely had to add a front spring to push that back onto the shelf. And if he needs any help finding a good spring that would work, I have about 5,000 of them here that I have from before when I originally thought I was going to be able to sell this as a product. And so I put a lot of time and testing into the sliding of that feature, and it being used in a 3-position where the safety is being done in a secondary function. And so yeah, I can show them some pretty good springs and show them all the other springs I have that I used when I was testing and working up the design, and can help out. So go ahead and I'll show you the rest of the video here on the rest of the way that it works and how the spring helps it as a FRT. And so how does that help? So put it into the trigger. Now I also, with the design of this, the chamfer, there's a slight chamfer on the inside of the disconnect there. It allows it to lock into this standard Mil-Spec pin. Boom, into the pin location, so it clicks in and locks in, and that's how and why I'm able to use Mil-Spec pins without it coming out when you're firing and using it. Okay, and so then how does this work? So that front FRT spring, front disconnect spring, is pushing the disconnect rearward, where the standard disconnect spring is lifting it upright. This pushes this foot up onto the shelf, creating the locked trigger, which is now a forced reset trigger, right? And so when the hammer bumps up here in this space, it forces the trigger forward because there's nowhere for the disconnect to go. Now on the safety, when you're in standard safe mode, this is pushed forward. And then also when you move over to the single position, this is still held forward. Whoop. Still held forward. And then when you flip to get my hands right here, we flip to the 3rd position, now you've reached a cutout that allows this to move back up onto that shelf. All right, and so as we showed here, when it's up on the shelf, it's in forced reset position, and then when this is cammed forward into the standard position of a of a standard Mil-Spec disconnect, then it just uses the exact same motion as a standard Mil-Spec disconnect. Some of this shape is just user preference at a point. When I was mocking it up, there's a gap right here at the front naturally, and so I decided 4 points of contact would be a lot stronger than just having 2 at the back. But like I said, that's all just user design preference. What else? And so, and so at that point, cutting the hammer here could also, you could probably leave this full Mil-Spec length and just shorten this top hat down to a lower location. But I wanted to make sure I had strength and beef in here. And yeah, just like I said, some of this is just design concept idea, just design work. But the main piece is that cutout in the disconnect that allows the disconnect to move forward and backwards. And like I said, the safety not only has the one function of being a safety, but it also has the secondary function that it pushes the disconnect forward and allows it to work in the single position as well, which also goes into with this. So when it's in the forward position, that allows the FRT locking bar to kind of cam forward also, which disconnects it from the disconnect and doesn't allow it to grab. So in the regular standard position, this does not need to be unlocked. It works just like a standard Mil-Spec trigger. No FRT lock bar even engaged. And then when this snaps back up onto the shelf, that will push this also from the bottom to the rear, which cams this forward into a position where the lock on the locking bar is now engaged with the lock up here on the sear surface. And and so in the FRT, then you're locked in and it's waiting for, once it kicks, it's waiting for the hammer to push it back down for this to click in and lock over. And that's basically the entire operations and workings of the MBT. And so I wanted to show that off. And then because I didn't get to go into full design, the next iterations of this was going to be taking a 3-round burst Mil-Spec trigger and yeah, basically reworking same this disconnect onto a 3-round burst kit, splitting it like this and making a 3-round burst FRT. But I kind of got stopped in some of my design stuff before getting there, and so now I'm working on just customizing the current FRTs that are out there. And so look forward to some of the things that are coming there, as they're pretty awesome. And if you want to watch the how to put this together and install it, that'll be available over on Rumble. Thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting Militia State Armory.